Alright, for our second video today, we're just going to do this first example, even though it says example 2. We're just going to do this example right here. Alright, that's it. So it says given the points D, E, and F, I already plotted those, it's a triangle, and point GHI, so that's this pink triangle right here, it wants us to prove that those two triangles are congruent. Alright, so we're going to prove that this pink triangle is congruent to the red triangle. Obviously they look the same, they look like they're congruent. The question is, how do we prove that they're congruent? Well, if you remember, we have 3 triangle congruence proofs. Four proofs. SAS, AAS, and ASA. 3 of those proofs, these ones right here, require finding an angle. And I don't think we've learned in this class how to find the angle of a triangle in the coordinate plane. So I don't think we're going to work with those ones. I think it would just be easiest to do SSS here. You know how to find the side lengths of a triangle in the coordinate plane. It's just the distance formula. So if we can find the sides of all the triangles and show that they match up, I think we'll have a case to say that they're congruent. So the big picture is, let's find all of the sides of this triangle and all the sides of this triangle and show that they're the same. If you remember how to do the distance formula, you just count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, 2. So to get from D to E, I went up 4 and over 2. Alright, I want you to remember those numbers, up 4, over 2, to get from D to E. So, if I want to do that mathematically, I'm going to write DE equals, and if you guys remember, all you do is use the square root of 4 squared and 2 squared. Right? You just take the 4, you take the 2, you square them, add them together, and then take the square root. So that's actually equal to the square root of, if I square 4, I get 16 plus 4. 2 squared is 4, right? And that's just the square root of 20. And if I do the square root of 20 on my calculator, I get 4.47. So DE, this guy right here, is equal to 4.47. Awesome, pretty cool. Now we're going to do the same for EF. To get from E to F, I go over 1, down 2. Alright, over 1, down 2. If I'm going to find the distance using those numbers, I'm just going to do the same thing I did previously. I'm going to say EF equals, and remember I went over 1, so I do 1 squared, and down 2, so I do 2 squared. So that's just the square root of 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, so that's 1 plus 4. 1 plus 4 is 5, so if I take the square root of 5, I got my calculator with me, I get 2.24 if I kind of round it off there. Alright, 2.24. So this distance here is 4.47. This distance here is 2.24. The last one we need to find is the distance of DF. So to get from D to F, I go over 1, 2, 3, and I go up 1, 2. Alright, so I went over 3, and that's a terrible 2, but that's supposed to be a 2. So I went over 3, up 2. So to compute that distance, I'm going to do the same thing, so that's DF now. DF equals, and remember I had the numbers 3 and 2, so I'm just going to do the square root of 3 squared plus 2 squared. Alright, well 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4, and if I add 9 plus 4 I get 13, and if I use my calculator, the square root of 13 is 3.61, if I kind of round it to the nearest hundredths place there. Okay, so that gives us all of the sides of this red triangle. Now let's find all of the sides of our pink triangle. So let's find from G to H. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So I'm going over, or excuse me, up 4, over 2. So now, for my pink triangle, that's GH equals, and again I went over 4, up 4 over 2, so it's just the square root of 4 squared plus 2 squared. 4 squared is 16, 2 squared is, 2 squared is 4. If you add 16 and 4, you get 20. Take the square root of 20, and it actually comes out to be 4.47. What I want you to notice is that that 4.47 is the same as DE. So it looks like this side is congruent to that side. Alright, let's continue on then. If I do it with HI, so let's forget this guy, we just did him. If I do it with HI, you'll notice that I have to go over 1, down 2 to get there. Over 1, down 2. So I'm going to write that equation out. Alright, so HI is equal to the square root of, and I went over 1, down 2, so I'm just going to go over 1 squared plus down 2 squared. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. Add those together, you get 5. Take the square root of 5, you get, hey, what do you know, 2.24. Notice that that 2.24 is the same as EF. So I should probably start adding tick marks here. This guy was the same as this guy. And we just did this one. HI, I'll put 2 tick marks there, is the same as EF, so I'll put 2 tick marks there. The last thing we need to do is find the distance of GI. So again, I'm going to count. I go over 1, 2, 3, and I have to go up 1, 2. So to get from G to I go over 3, up 2. So now I'm going to type that into my equation. So GI is equal to, again I went over 3 up 2, so I'm going to do square root of over 3, so it's 3 squared, up 2, so that's 2 squared. 3 squared is 9, 9. 2 squared is 4. If I add 9 and 4, I get 13. And once I take the square root of 13, lo and behold, I get 3.61. And it's no surprise that this guy is the same as this guy in the previous triangle. Right? So that means I can go over here, and let's give 3 tick marks here and 3 tick marks here. And therefore I have proven that the two triangles are congruent. So I should write a little blurb, and I want you guys to do this too. I'm going to say, because all 3 sides in triangle DEF are congruent to all 3 sides in triangle GHI, the two triangles are congruent by SSS congruency. Alright, that's all you got to write at the end. Just to say that, hey, these 3 sides are equal to these 3 sides, so then all the triangles are equal. On your homework, notice that there are questions when I say, hey, prove that, like in one of your questions, I think I say, like, prove angle D is congruent to angle G. You're going to do the same thing. Prove the triangles are congruent by side, side, side. And then if you have that situation, let's say this problem said, prove that angle D is congruent to angle G. All I need to say is, also, angle D is congruent to angle G by, and do you remember what allows me to say everything else is congruent? CPCTC. So, if I ask you to prove the triangles are congruent, you do not need this part. If I ask you to prove the angles are congruent, then I do need you to add this part in and say that their angles are congruent by CPCTC. So please check the problem and see what you're exactly trying to prove, triangles or the angles.